Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another special We Have a Cave Troll stream. My name is Matt Elliott. I go by an area on the message boards. I'm a senior world designer on Lord of the Rings Online, and we have...
I'm Mackie. I'm the lead designer on the game, and I don't know if it's really special. It's just our monthly chit chat where we go over stuff, and you know that's it.
Well, there's something special going on in the background of our stream right
No,
now as well.
no, that's nothing. You've got the we
That's
have a
nothing
cave
special.
bring up, and there's nothing special there. Come on, what do
So,
you?
like Alan said, this is our monthly talk about whatever we feel like talking about stream, and with the expansion pack coming its way faster than I think any of us are really ready for. We thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about the pre-production process of both expansion packs and just in general what goes into coming up with the ideas and getting an idea rolling in Lord of the Rings Online. And pre-production
Yeah,
is something that we've been steeped in for probably all of our career, whether it was working on video games or working outside of video games. It's an important part.
yeah, no, I mean, arguably one of the most important parts, and uh, probably next to hindsight, right? Hindsight is so much more important because it should inform you what not to do in the future. I think though for what we've done over the past almost 20 years, right, is the pre-production on the early parts of the game very different than on the
Mm-hmm.
now, where we have a lot of where almost everything is established and we know what's going to happen inside of anything, and it's amazing to me like how much faster we are at some of the I'm going to call them rote parts of the design
The
element
boring.
and the things that we know need to get done. Yeah, we can call them boring, but the necessities,
Yeah.
right? The creation of monsters, the creation of our generators and generator profiles and all
Well,
of that stuff,
I wouldn't
right?
even say that's pre-production. That is actual production.
Well, sure, but we outline what those are going to be,
Yeah.
right? We determine. I mean, the pre-production aspect would be, hey, we're moving to a new region or new regions inside
Mm-hmm.
of the game world. What kind of monsters would we like to highlight? Are
Yeah.
there going to be any new ones? Will we have new rigs? Will we have new? Are we just going to be making a whole bunch of new APRs? Will there be new textures? So on and so forth. Like all that stuff is part of that early pre-production
Well, and how many people do we have to actually do those things?
to
I think
execute. Sure, yeah, yeah.
that is in the very, very early stages of any deliverable that we've had, whether it is a quest pack update or a full-on expansion pack. We've never had a shortage of volume of ideas, and then part of the pre-production process is then sitting down and being like, okay, we have all these ideas. Do we have enough people for all of these ideas?
And
Um,
invariably, the answer is no,
no.
right?
I
Yeah, I mean,
remember. Well, I remember
but
years and years ago because the pre-production process for Lotro has also like changed significantly. I would say probably every few years as the team has changed, what the needs for a deliverable are, and just what the cadence of the product is as well. And I think too, at least in the last like year and a half or so, we've kind of gone through and done another whole big revision on what our pre-production process is in order to accommodate new people on the team. People who may not be as steeped in and familiar with our tools, our engine, our game itself, and I think that's like that's healthy, but also it is a adventure every time we go to kind of do that because we think we have to think about like, okay, well, what new ways do we want to try to approach things that might better support the people on our team.
yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of consideration that has to be given to uh, what happens because we don't split the team, right? Because
Yeah.
the team is constantly rotating through live work, dev work, pre-production work into the development timelines, uh, the the timing of everything is a lot harder to pin down than it is if we were doing what we did in the old days, right? I mean, with
Mm-hmm.
Moria, we had the team that was working on live, and then we had the team that was working on
Yep.
the expansion. We don't have that. We don't have that luxury anymore, right? Because we just don't have
Well, and
the resources available.
even before that, right after we launched the game, our product release cycle was like a 20-week cycle. So,
Yeah, it was
and
very
it was a staggered 20 week cycle where like we would have the world team working on something for the first 10 weeks of that, and then that would be handed off to content and systems for them to finish up their needs, and then the world team would be starting the first 10 weeks of the next update. So it's like even dim, okay, even dim's done from a world perspective, now on to Foreshell, and now on to Eregion,
I mean,
and we're not siloed in that way anymore.
it's a little ironic though, right? That one of the things that I've been pushing for the past few months at least is to kind of take a step back toward that and the
Mm-hmm.
way we kind of did things in the past. Because I mean, you and I are both very well aware that we end up stepping on each other's toes
Yeah.
from a content and a world standpoint, mostly because the way that the pipelines currently work for art and world and content, they all just kind of have this parallel structure that has one massive convergence point where
Mm-hmm.
we're all working in the same land block, or we're all working in the same areas at the same time, stepping on each other's toes. And it's, hey, did you make a change here? You know, this undercuts something that I did. And then it's a measure of, can we leave the animosity out of this, or is the frustration going to bubble over? I mean, it's become a really interesting Jenga puzzle, and I think one of the things that we're trying to kind of work back to is that notion that the pre-production aspect and getting all the ducks in a row, and you and I having more extensive project management chops than we did back in the proverbial day, uh, give us a unique outlook and unique way of kind of trying to tackle that. And I know that's one of the things that I've been trying to do is get us back to having more legitimate timelines and figuring out how to mitigate some of that overlap. And
It's
it
like we're
seems,
adults now.
oh, it kind of is, right? We grew up, but it's proving really difficult, I think, um, because of all the other things that are out there. But I think one of the things that we did specifically with this particular pre-production, and I think before I even go down this road, I want to just say to those who are listening, the number of ideas that we come up with that kind of go into a pre-production cycle, it's more often that more end up dead on the floor
Mm-hmm.
than make it through to what we can actually accomplish.
Well,
And
when we were doing Corsairs of Umbar, for example, when we were doing monster planning, which is part of our
yeah,
pre-production cycle, where it's basically it's a multi-stage thing where we sit down and first start with, okay, what ideas for monsters do we have in these regions that we're going to? And for Corsairs of Umbar, we were covering Outer Gondor, parts of King's Gondor, the Shield Isles, and Umbar itself. So the list of like new monster types, ideas for new monster types, whether it is brand new monster or like really different art treatment for existing monsters, I think we probably had close to 100 different things listed.
yeah,
And then after we have that pie in the sky, everyone get their ideas out in a spreadsheet somewhere, then we sit down with art
five.
and we sit
Like
down with art and say,
five.
okay, how much do we have budget for? But the nice thing about that process for that expansion pack, though, is that really helped us inform other monsters to introduce with Legacy of Morgoth and monsters to introduce with this new expansion pack that's coming out. Um,
Yeah.
so, like, a lot of the stuff that is new stuff that we're seeing in this upcoming expansion pack is stuff that, 3 years ago we had on a great big list of, like, here are things we would like for this region, for these regions, that, like, they didn't make the cut, but we held on to those ideas going forward. And even art will often say, like, we really like all these ideas, we don't have the room for it, but these things here might be good for later on when you get to these areas, and later on when you get to these areas. So it's not that we're necessarily throwing anything out, it is just, sticking it to the wall, and it'll hang out there for a while.
It gets backlogged. I mean, that's the easiest way to put it. It gets put in a giant backlog of things that we'd like to pull out at some point in time. And, some of those things we're finally going to get to see them. And I'm pretty excited about a couple of the new monsters that players will see. I mean, but I think you're right. I think we had 30 or 40 ideas for Umbar, and I think we got 5.
Yeah.
And a lot of them
they were like the bigger ticket things that we could have asked for, because a lot of the things were like, color variations on this, and we're kind of like, color variation isn't enough. We'd really want to make it distinct, but we don't have the art time to make it distinct. But then after that stage, we then go into the planning the specifics for what's going to be in what area, what types of things, and sometimes that's where like world need and content need. I wouldn't say conflict, but there is sometimes difference of opinion in like what should be created, because we each have different approaches to what we need for our given spaces. Content needs quest targets, world needs targets that fill certain profiles on the landscape, so that you're not, to bring a phrase back from some of our original advertising for Lotro, so that's you're not just staring at a sea of angry dudes.
The sea of angry dudes.
So it's like my goals whenever I'm, and I'm usually the one that runs the monster planning meeting where we bring in our content people and our systems people and our art people all together to talk. My goals is to make sure that each region that we're making and each kind of major subdivision of those areas have representations of different physical shapes of enemies. We have a warg-like shape. We have a, human-sized bipedal shape. We have something that's flying, something that's like tiny and on the ground, and those sorts of things. And then we mix in other content needs for like, I really need for the story of this region to have these kinds of creatures in it, and so we figure out what creatures work good in those slots, and then it becomes a game of bargaining.
We actually skipped over the very first part though, right? So
because we didn't need to.
Well, but the very first part is when we sit down. So it's weird, right? We do have a sketch at the very least of where we're going for the next X number of years, where we intend to take the story, so on and so forth. And the Song of Waves and Wind is what we've been focusing on from the main story epic for the past 3 years. And whenever we move to a different area of the world, especially now that we've moved away from the source material as far as we have from an actual like regional standpoint, the first thing that really happens is our storyteller maestro puts together that huge regional doc and that story time that he spends weeks on.
Oh yeah, he goes away for a month and a half, and we don't hear from him.
And then he comes back, and no joke, he's got a novel that he makes us read.
Yep.
And like that becomes our homework. Read this, learn this, memorize it. These are your key points to kind of glom onto. And this isn't for the main story. This is for all the other content designers who are looking at different pieces and aspects of the area that we're moving to. And I think that he does a fantastic job at that. I don't necessarily know that we always do a fantastic job of interpreting that and incorporating it into the stories. But I also think that for a while we may have strayed away from that formula, and we're trying to get back to that now. And I think that we started to really hit those points with Umbar and Legacy of Morgoth.
I think one of the challenges
with the new expansion.
Yeah, we call this story time. This period of planning. It's our region planning time. It's story time, and we do literally, when we were in a physical office together, we would all get in a meeting room, and often people would bring like cozy blankets and popcorn, and just listen to the history that of the place that we're going as told by Pearson. You know, it is he yeah it is often easy 80 pages
Oh yeah.
of backstory, more depending on if it is something where he has a lot of like whole cloth stuff that needs to be created. And I think, yeah, the like as you had mentioned, like sometimes that backstory doesn't get translated as well into the bread and butter content of the region. And I can understand where that can be a challenge for a designer wanting to both kind of make their mark with the content and the stories they are telling, but also needing to be able to incorporate the information about the region in there. And those don't necessarily always line up. You know, you want to tell your stories, you have stories you want to tell, but we also need to make sure that we find ways to weave the narrative of the region through those stories, and also find ways to link the stories that Made of Lions is telling into the narratives of the regions as well, leaving threads and whatnot for the designers to pull on.
Yep. In fact, the most recent, or the region personality for the upcoming expansion was 107 pages.
Now,
I just looked
you
it up.
just looked that
Just to
up?
make sure. I did. It's 107 pages long, covering 4 different areas. Right. So it is a novella. Like there's
Yeah.
you can't argue that it's a novella that is filled with very important information. The personalities that made the land what it is, that made the different areas what they are. It has historical background on any of the major sites. Those are just like the major POIs. That's not going
Hmm.
to the cities or the major settlements that are there. And those are things that we try to incorporate in and tell those stories at the same time. And like you said, everyone wants to put their own spin on things, but we also need to be cognizant of making sure that enough exposition for what is really happening inside of this particular part of the world comes through, because it is an important part of the storytelling overall. And yeah, I mean, it's the sometimes I really envy Made of Lions for being able to step back from that and be able to just focus on the story that he continues to tell, because it's it's a different set of difficulties and challenges that is just very interesting. But I also know that I don't have the patience for that. I don't have the uh, I don't have the capacity to really do what he does in that particular way, because it's an amazing task that he pulls off whenever we put one of these massive epics out. And it's
Yeah.
it's a testament, I think, to the team as a whole, that we've been able to continue with the storytelling that we've been able to for the past nearly 20 years. Right? It's been a lot of hard work, and that early stage is what kind of fuels the fire for those stories, and then maybe taking some of the things that we may have wanted to tell as individual storytellers and figuring out, oh, this is a hook that I can use to tell the same type of
Hmm.
story that now fits better inside of the overall narrative of a particular region of.
Well,
So
and sometimes the stories that Bait of Lions is telling is a like launch off point for ideas that other designers like really connect to.
Mhm.
I think it was with the Before the Shadow expansion pack and the end instance there. You know, that spun out of the story that Made of Lions was telling through those regions.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that kind of has a nice like connection to sort of how we had originally built the game as well, where it was like the epic
Mhm.
story was what weaved you through the regions and brought you to where those end caps for those regions are, and then those end caps have their own, you know, further narratives beyond just where the epic story brings you.
So there was a question that just came in from Hell Hunt, asking if someone is keeping and collecting these novels? It might be an interesting read someday in some form. The answer is they don't go away. They're all collected and they're all still maintained. And there might be a possibility that eventually some of that will be released into the game
And
in
we do
some
keep
some
all
way,
of
shape,
that
or form.
documentation.
Of course we do. Of course
You
we do.
know,
It's
and
reference material.
yeah, it is reference material. It is honestly more academic because a lot of those documents that are written, they feel like they are more like written histories than just like bullet points of this and this and this and this
Yeah.
because of the work that is put into that. And I think that that helps the designers transition from reading into it to linking their own ideas into it. If they can feel it being semi-narrative but not prescriptively narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nothing is really the only time that you have to be cautious is uh if you want to change something that was in there, and it's usually something we can work out, but it's never like a this is what you have to do, it has to be this structure and so on and so forth. I think I think once we get through that, that's when we start to realize, oh, the monsters that really should be in this area
Mm-hmm.
are these, and then we move into figuring out what makes the most sense for hubs and how we're going to move people through the different areas, and we get into determining how many reputations might be involved,
Yep.
and we start determining
What the
on some of the minutia that goes into each of these big releases.
Yeah, after usually what happens is we do our story time, we do high level mapping, then we do monster planning after that, region setup, and I try to. I don't think we've codified it yet, but I try to raise the flag of region flow, mostly so that mostly for my own selfish person in or purposes in implementing the travel system. And I know there have been a few times where I'm just like, great, we've planned out these hubs, but I really need you guys to support one more hub so that I can have a travel route here that makes sense in order to make it work for the region. So that we're not like forcing you to hoof it all the way
Yeah,
across an entire region all the time.
yeah,
And then after that, there's some back end work that we do, and then it's on to production generally.
yeah. I mean, a lot of that back end, and I know this is going to be uh, this will be picked apart, but a lot of the back end that happened this time was, I guess it was more just the pre-planning on it, was determining how we were doing the kind of capstones for each of the for each of the new
Mm-hmm.
areas. What were the main beats going to be? Where were the instances going to fit? And then how were we going to route people to the raid at the end of that? And you know, one thing that we did get knocked on for the Legacy of Morgoth raid was that it didn't really fit and feel like it was a cohesive part of what was going on in that story bit. And I think we're trying to identify and fix that for this particular release, because we did work that through and we know exactly how we're getting you. We know why. Um, and there, like all of this stuff is just part and parcel in the development and that pre-seed of the documents that really make the structure that is going to be your expansion pack. And then we go into just fine details and minutia and really getting down to the nitty gritty, and then picking out names for names. There's another good one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Names where it takes Pearson another 3-4 days to come up with all the different names for any of the characters that we're putting in, or monsters that we're putting in, or locations that we're putting in, because each one has to be meticulously reviewed, researched, to ensure that we're not straying outside of what Tolkien would have used for the initial ideas, or uh, the reasons behind something, and we're also not offending any culture that's out there in the world, or anything along those lines. We have to be very careful. I know you'll remember from way back in the day on our first gig, where uh, a certain designer gotten a little bit of trouble with the native population of New Zealand
Mhm.
because of
Something weird happened with my earbuds. We're just going to go with one for right now. Maybe it preemptively thought I was going to say something about the expansion pack that I'm not supposed
oh
to say, and it was just
no,
like,
we
nope.
don't get censored like that. Where were
Alrighty.
we?
So
We were
where
talking
were
about.
we?
I think we were just talking about. I think we were kind of winding down on what pre-production really is, right?
Yeah, I think there are like there are little bits and pieces of, like you said, the not fun stuff. I usually take on all the region setup, so it's things like setting up the properties for the different areas, the day files, our defeat system, like all of that is, even though it is actual production work, I treat it as pre-production because it's all part of the like high level loose planning for things. Often we will do a high level radar image pass on everything so that all teams kind of can have a sense of the scale of things. Um, and then yeah, after that it's just getting to work, um, and trying to work in layers if we can. Um,
Yeah, I mean the setup work on our side is a little different because we're setting up all the GB structure that is going to be where we house the monsters and NPCs, items, and everything else. So there's a lot of that goes into it, and it's I mean like I said at the outset, it's rote. It's just it's stuff that we know to do, we have to do, and we just kind of do it on autopilot.
mhm.
Whenever we're moving up levels, like we are, also another host of work that gets done under the hood to make sure that we're setting up the progressions correctly, so damage doesn't get out of whack, or healing doesn't get out of whack, or the bonuses that you're getting for abilities and all stayed within the proper lines and don't end up overpowering or underpowering a certain group. And all of that is still going on while working on production, true production, live production,
Yep.
right? So the changes that are happening in real time can't collide, and it ends up either pushing some aspects of what goes into an expansion back, or makes the work that's done for the live product that much more difficult, right? Because you have to do the work in two places and make sure that you're not merging things over that are going to break the live game or alter the live game in some way. And every once in a while, sneak through, but
I
we do make sure it doesn't.
Yeah. And I think too, like the way we've handled this whole process, we've tried to be as flexible as we can and find ways to adjust to make things smoother. Years ago, up until probably what about 2 years ago, the way our like assignments for who was working on what kind of went is usually the world team, each member of the world team would get a whole region to build, but then often the content team would be kind of all in on one region all at one time and then move on to the next region and then move on to the next region, which had its benefits, at least from the world design perspective, but also meant that sometimes region work would be coming in way too hot for the later regions towards the end of it. Um, and it also sometimes resulted in somewhat disparate voices and narratives within
Yeah,
a region because you had a whole team of designers designing their own things, but not necessarily writing in the same style or in the same themes as the other content designers.
yeah,
Um, and with these recent changes that were largely spearheaded by you, we've kind of moved to more of a region owner model compared to what it had been for a very long time, which also harkens back to what we were doing with our original production, which, hey, if
yeah.
it worked before, right?
Well, I mean,
uh,
for good or ill, that's kind of where I was taking the lead from, because I feel like when I got back, I feel like one of the main gripes that I was hearing from the content team, I don't feel like I have a voice and the ability to tell the stories that I want to tell inside of those regions. Mostly because everybody was focused on those very same locations, so there had to
Mm-hmm.
be, that Tetris to play there to make sure that you weren't telling the same story over and over again. I think one of there's an interesting example that I remember playing through when I got back in Gondor, where I think there are like 5 gather wood quests
Mm-hmm.
all within the same hub, and it's it was like one of those things where I said, "Oh, that feels awkward," right? Because
Yeah, it's like
it
this
just it
designer
just means
went
that people
north to
weren't.
gather wood. This
Yeah,
designer
yeah,
went south to gather wood.
yeah, and it ends up being that kind of thing. It was that nobody was really talking to one another, passing through that. So I mean that's one of the things that I think we've been trying to address and adjust, and by pushing back, by using the past as the blueprint for the future, I think what we're actually doing is setting ourselves up to continue in a more positive general direction overall. At least it feels that way. I think this is potentially the first expansion that we've had a team that is filled with more seasoned uh,
Mm-hmm.
team members, right? Because we've
A
gone
lot of
through
them
a
cut their teeth
transition over
last
the past.
expansion pack, and
Yeah, 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 and now they're a little more seasoned and they're more capable, and I think it kind of shows that things are continuing to improve and get better. I mean, the uh, just from the experience at least that I've seen in reviewing the things that are getting put together at this point, I'm really excited about where we're headed, and I think that Pearson's outline for this new region and areas is some of his best, like so far. It's a very clear and concise way of setting things up, and it's given uh, me and Made of Lions and Pearson the ability to sit down. Well, where do we go from here? And we know where we're going certainly for next year and the year after, and then we have branches that we could follow from
Mhm.
there. Like there is so many other paths that will be open to us once we get beyond the next couple of expansions at this point. So we're really really looking forward to getting this out there and letting people see these areas and places. And I think I don't want to tease it too much, but I think we're probably going to start looking at some of these. Maybe not in your next scenario stream, but maybe the one after.
So yeah, first to kind of circle back to the planning and pre-production aspect of things, talking about like where we're going next and whatnot. Like it is like we haven't finished what we're working on, but we are very close to the point where we need to start having pre-production conversations about what we're doing for the first full numbered post update, post expansion update, as well as what we're doing with the next expansion pack, so that we can start like getting our story time for those things ready,
Mm-hmm.
getting our planning ready, getting our maps ready, getting some of our high level conversations about the monster planning and the region planning like out of the way. And this time of year is always like tricky to balance that too, because we don't want to distract our design team from doing the work that they need to do, but we need to ask them to just like give us like 5-10% of your brain power so that we can start moving forward on these things as well, to position us so that we can, when the world team is done working on what we're working on, we can just roll into starting on the next things.
Yeah,
Um,
and part of what certainly I've been trying to do is artificially create some breathing space in there, right? And I think what Pearson gave to us in this particular year story time is enough runway for us to potentially hold everything together for the next two big expansions, right? So this expansion and the next.
mhm.
And then like you said, like update 47, which is, we go into pre-production for that. The day after we're done with production for
I got
update
stuff ready if we
36,
need to use it.
right? Well, what we're really focused on at this point though is making sure that we're taking that step back. We wanted to do this last year, but circumstances kind of converged on us and put us in a position time we wanted. We want to take some time to really some of those quality of life issues and longer standing bugs that have been plaguing players for years, right? We really want to make sure that we can have an update that focuses more on alleviating some of the long-standing difficulties, and also gives, and this is going to sound so very selfish, but also gives the design team some time to focus on the thing that they really want to focus on themselves. Like things that we look at on the regular and say, if I only had a few weeks to focus on this, I could improve it by this much, right? And we're weighing those things out into.
Or even if they're like, I've never done a further adventures arc before, and I would really love to do a further adventures arc.
Yeah,
or
things like that.
I would really like to design a region from scratch.
Why are you saying that?
I don't know. I didn't say anything.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to. That's what we're trying to inject back into the development cycle, because, I mean, those of you who are watching us, you probably don't realize it, but it is a very fast pace that we work at. Like we are constantly moving forward. We are constantly, every day, whether you can believe it or not, is jam packed with stuff that we are doing. Yeah. And if it's not something that we're doing in the here, like we were talking about in here, it's stuff that we are planning for the future, or it's stuff that we're planning for the distant future, or it is potentially stuff that we're planning for the 20th anniversary, or even the 25th anniversary, right? Like there are things that we are doing, we're scheduling over the course of not just releases, but years. In fact, just the other day, I put in all of our release dates from now until the year 2029. So that's 4 years that we now know where the release dates, at least where the release dates are supposed to be, because, hey, stuff happens and sometimes things have to change a bit. But at least we have those things in the pipe and we can see what is supposed to be upcoming. So we're constantly moving, constantly trying to revise and lay the track as the train is moving. They kind of what we're doing. So even our pre-production is almost constant while we're still working on the last.
There's always something new to plan for.
Yeah, and of course we're looking in terms of years. Like the game itself is still, it's still you're still playing it, you're still enjoying it, we're still loving making it, right? There's still a great love affair with the game, and that's something that I think we're all really cognizant of, and we're really happy about it, because we really enjoy making it as much as you enjoy playing, and we constantly want to improve it.
So I think we've kind of gone through everything when it comes to pre-production. You had mentioned stuff that's coming up for preview streams. And about a week or so ago, we actually kind of pinned down what our timing for all of those are going to be. We've got my stream, my usual stream is coming up. I'm doing a lot of streaming in September and October. Oh boy. We got the beginning of September, the first Wednesday of September, is going to be just a normal casual stroll stream where I'm going to be doing the roads of Middle-earth from Lynn here all the way to Pinnith, I think, as far as I can get. And then after that, you and I are going to officially kick off preview season with an introduction to the expansion pack as part of our We Have a Cave Troll stream. And then after that, every week I'm going to be doing a landscape preview stream of our four regions, one of which you can see in the background here. It is looking very lovely right now.
I want to live there.
You do? All right. Bundle
No,
housing it is.
no, I've recently been through that particular area. Um, while I started to do a lot of the content work that I'm doing for the expansion, and no, it's not a place I want to live. It's really not. But I mean, it is beauty in how gross it is. I think is the
There
right
you go.
way to say it, right? I mean, even like the deeper areas that Pearson's working on,
Mm-hmm.
they're beautiful, even though the premise and what they are is the exact opposite of that, right?
Yep.
It's pretty amazing. So
Well, I think one of the things that's fun about any new expansion pack, and it starts with the pre-production aspect of it, and then rolls into the actual like art requests and production and planning and all of that, is finding ways to make areas look interesting and distinct and fresh from each other and unique from each other, while also still making them feel like they connect naturally. We did not have great success with that, in my opinion, with our launch game, because it was a very fishbowl theme park style MMO experience.
what are
Where,
you trying to say? That it didn't make sense that you went from like the beautiful area of Evendim and like a hop, skip, and a jump away was
yeah, that, or Lonelands Breland, where you go from beautiful verdant green to, oh, here's a savanna. There wasn't
yeah.
a great transition there, and I think,
Oh, and then that savannah turns into the troll shaws, which
yeah.
is perpetual fall. I say, oh, okay.
So it's and granted, we have the like conceit that each region is time locked to the period of time that the epic story being told of
Yeah, of
it
course.
goes through, which so that helps it a little bit. But I think one of my goals and one of our goals as a world team is to try to just help the regions feel more like the biomes, the ecology, the bestiary transition more naturally than they had previously in earlier iterations of the game.
Yeah.
So since we're here and we haven't really paid too much attention to the chat, why don't we just run down the chat and see if there are any questions to answer? I know there are a few that have been commented on already that we've probably covered on, such as Matt Moga saying, "Will this stream have an open forum time? I've got me some questions to ask." Um,
I said yes, there would be. So if there are
so I
questions,
think I think that's
ask.
where we're at now.
Yep.
Um, Blossomberry asking if our pre-production ever results in shouting matches.
Oh yeah.
Uh, not as
Not as much as you
actual
want.
shouting matches as they had been back in the day. I think there were certainly, in ages past, there were certainly personalities that would really like angrily argue. um, and I'm not even thinking about you, Alan. There
Oh,
are
I
others,
was angry though.
but I think now I think the challenge is not necessarily the shouting match, but making sure that we're like hearing everyone's ideas, but also being able to provide counterpoints and counter suggestions that are also heard.
Yeah, I think we have. I think we've learned the. It's it's one thing to say that's a bad idea and leave it at that than it is to say, hey, it's an idea, but have you thought about this? Right?
Yeah.
Offering the counterpoint, I think, is the most important thing that you learn over time. Is that saying something is bad just outright and not providing a counter is just a wrong way to have. Did we ever have our conversation on argue and fight? I can't remember.
In this
Yeah,
stream,
in this. I don't think we have. Right?
we might have touched on it a little bit as part of the. We had talked about PvP stuff here and there,
Yeah,
and I think that comes up in it occasionally, but not too specifically.
we should probably focus one of these on argue and fight and explain the concept of Thunderdome
Hmm.
to the players at some point.
Which isn't a
Um,
thing that really exists in our
Not
current model.
anymore. Not anymore. But it used to. Let's keep going
Did.
down. Is there a chance for the Etten Moors to include the Etten? Not likely. Can you bring back the Epic Book to be free to everybody someday? I can't answer that one off the top of my head. I'd have other people who are above my pay grade to really get an answer on that.
Well,
Downscaling.
and to speak to that one too. So there is the start of the new epic, the newest epic book that is not, you know, Legacy of Durin. That is not the Black Book of Mordor. It is not the Song of Waves and Wind. There is an actual like epic book that started with the royal wedding, the wedding between Aragorn and Arwen. And when we are at the point of continuing the story, that story, where that story leads out of, I would not be surprised if those chapters get added to that deed, to that story, and that is something that players can continue playing as part of their, their free epic story.
Yeah. I think that there are always things that are in the works along those lines. The downscaling system it's still on hold. It's still something that we would like to look at. Again, there's a 20th anniversary coming up, not that far down the road. Yes, we already talked about keeping the information.
And there's conversations about just the sheer number of levels that we have, and I think we do understand that it can be daunting for a new player to look at the level cap and have a hard time imagining themselves at that level cap. But there's also the mindset of the game, right? Where the game is a journey game, not necessarily a destination game.
Right.
And this isn't to say yes, no on level scaling or level squish or anything like that. This is just saying that oftentimes reframing your mindset when approaching any game like this can be helpful. And I do think that the player community of Lotro tends to be more spread out across the breadth of levels than other games are, because we have players that take their time, they or love re-rolling things, and one of my goals is to continue supporting the concept of alternate level paths through regions, and that's one of these days I will be able to introduce that next one. We'll see when we get there. Hopefully sooner than later, but we'll get there eventually.
I think it's going to be sooner than you think. We won't talk about it though. So there's a few other questions in here that I did want. Class design and specifically around the captain. I'm not going to deep dive into that. That would be a much longer answer than I can really get to. Class design is always balanced against the other classes, not necessarily the single class at all. It's not a very easy question to answer. But I wanted to get to the question that was asked by Model whatever, Maddle Gamut 96. So the question is the man model. So right now the focus is on fixing some of the lingering issues with the elf model that are still out there. A lot of this is kind of related to animations and whatnot that we're going to be trying to tackle. I don't remember where man sits in the overall rework pipe, but I know that at some point that is planned. I don't know exactly when it is, though. I apologize. Is there a way objective-based play in the more? We have to come up with a better way to push Marta out and make it more relevant. But yes, there are still some ideas that we're working on. Recall someone on the team asking players about their thoughts for a kin revamp. So the kin, interesting thing about the kin revamp, it is ongoing. There are small pieces that are being done. It's going to take a while for us to get everything out there that we really want to do with the kin system. We've been holding a lot of what we plan to do with it close to the vest because we don't want to overdose on something, and we've already hit a couple of pretty significant way with the implementation because we had to change all of the underpinnings that existed for the data collection and the data handling on kinships because of how old that was. And that folds pretty well into the next question on the deed log. The deed log also suffered from the same type of thing, that a bunch of aspects weren't caught before it went out, and it had to be disabled, and there's no definitive timeline if it will return. Do you want to look at any? Did I miss anything?
So yeah, I was looking at a couple as well. Someone had asked about, stating that Nanara said, I've been long waiting for Harad. It sounds like you all have a lot planned. Do you have any concerns about or solutions for Harad fatigue? I could see, especially after this expansion, seeing the same kind of fatigue folks got from the dwarf expansions of yore. I think one of the things that we learned and tried to address with the Gundabad expansion pack, at least from a location, physical setting perspective, was making sure that we had variety in where you are going. And with what we did for Corsairs of Umbar, what we did with Legacy of Morgoth, and what we're doing with this expansion pack, I feel like we have a good spread of different styles of region. Yes, they are more arid spaces, but I think that there is variety in them to kind of keep it from feeling like you're just Region 1, desert. Region 2, desert. Region 3, desert. Region 4, desert. So we're trying to make sure that there's interest and variety in all of those. I think one of the challenges that we have with these regions is, not everyone wants to be in these areas, right? And that's okay for someone to kind of not like the stories we're telling, or to prefer more verdant and classically Northern European areas for their adventuring. That is okay. But we also want to make sure that we are telling stories that follow up on things that we've already set in place, and we want to make sure that we're addressing them in the way that doesn't feel like we've just ended and then moved on. And that's going to take us some time. I personally, from a designer perspective, I'm really enjoying having a break from the classical Gondor style regions, because it's new and interesting things to build. We wouldn't get something like Ur-Ashtar if we stayed in Rovanion. We just wouldn't. There's nothing like that up there. We wouldn't get maybe eventually to actual tropical jungles someday if we stayed up in the north, because those don't exist. So where we are now is an opportunity for us to explore geography that we wouldn't normally be able to play in if we otherwise stayed Rovanian centric.
Yeah.
Dagger Thief asks, when can we expect pre-purchase? I don't know what the dates for that are, but I do know that our marketing person and that Cordovan are fervently working on writing stuff in preparation for it.
I know the dates, but I can't say anything yet. Sorry. I just can't. Not allowed.
Do we want to talk a little bit? I don't think we've mentioned the names of the regions we're going to yet. So maybe we can, because we are almost done with this.
We are allowed to talk about the names of the... I don't think we can name the new region. We can talk about the areas in the new region.
The areas in the new region, like what their biomes are?
No. from a naming standpoint, right? Regional hierarchy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the one we're in right now is TDB Fungal Swamp A. Um,
No, it's not TBD fungus. No, it's not. It is. It is pretty much a fungal swamp, though. That's a really good way to put it. It actually has multiple names. That's the important. But
yeah.
we're gonna give the name that we're using.
Well,
You
would
can
you
say
like
it.
to give the names then?
You can say it. You can say it.
All right. We're in Atagame right now
Yeah.
in the background.
And then when we travel in a direction that I'm not going to, we'll arrive in Keegan.
Followed by Ansharu.
And we're probably going to end in an area called Idagal. And I'm hoping that I pronounced those correctly. If not, then I'll receive a very strongly worded response from Pearson at a later time where he tells me never talk about Tolkien names that I've created on a stream again.
Well, I think your pronunciation of the first region you said, I think that's actually Kijan.
Is it Key? You're right. It is Kijan because the GH in the Shigani language would be. Yeah, you're right.
It's got a bit of zhuzh to it.
Zhuzh.
So yeah, we've got those 4 regions. There are between the 4 of them. There are, I would say, probably 3 major-ish cities, or at least anchor cities, or civilizations within each one, settlements within each one.
Cultural strongholds.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. So yeah. Well, we are now past 4 o'clock. So
We are.
We are.
No,
Well, thank you everyone
no,
for hanging out with us for this stream, despite my screeching earbuds for a couple minutes there. We're glad you were able to hang out, chat with us, ask your questions, and we will definitely be having a lot more specific answers for you guys, starting with our streams next month, which is going to be here before we know it anyways.
It's crazy how I feel like we lost a month, man. I just feel like we lost a month.
I had 3 vacations this season, so that doesn't help.
I've got my second one coming up next week, and then oh man, is that a spider crawling around the background? Where did that guy come from? That's not right. That's not right.
Well, at least a Hjorn hasn't walked by yet, because they're not using the right artwork.
Yeah, that's true.
They look way too happy for this right now.
That's very true. I've seen them. They look way too happy.
All right, everyone.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out. We'll talk to you all in a couple of weeks. See you then.
See ya.